Chapter 4, Talking the Walk. Lack to abundance, love beyond fear, victim to victor, freedom from enslaved. This is the process, the journey. Witness and thrive, free to everyone. The blessed ones are drawn exactly as you are. Trust the process. Feel the expansion in your view. I was hoping that perhaps I could roll with you. You cannot roll with me, said the big O, but perhaps you can roll by yourself. Shel Silverstein, the missing piece, meets the big O, my missing piece. During those frigid days of winter at the end of 2014, I learned to honor the good as blessings and the bad as lessons, to be thankful for it all. The dawn of creating my regular gratitude practice helped me move through a depression that I felt for decades, but was too proud to ever validate. That winter, I noticed how my strength was running low, except I only knew how to pretend I was fine, feeling insecure, neurotic, and emotional. In actuality, I was barely functioning. Another irresponsible economic incident, budget? What budget? Caused me to reach out for financial help from my family. My father was generous and bailed me out of yet another tight jam when the bills were just a bit more than my paychecks could handle. I always felt so ashamed for needing to ask for support. My relatives seemed shocked and appalled that I'd need financial help at my age. It was a humiliating time of life. Although I asked for money, what I really needed was emotional assistance. I didn't know it at the time, but I lived this way for a couple of more years until I took a leap of into self-employment and started my massage practice. Being so broke all the time and excruciatingly isolated was the perfect time to learn to have appreciation for everything I did have that was good in my life. I had a place to live. I had a daughter. I had food to eat. I had running hot water and sanitation. I had a car. I had love in my heart and a desire to help others. I was doing the best I could and wanted to grow. I was learning how to identify and validate my feelings for the first time ever at 40. I stopped running away from my problems. My life had me cornered. I was stuck, yet I knew it was a way to a new place I'd never traveled before. I had a sense that what was all happening for good reason. I had a sense that was all happening for good reason, even God's will, so I didn't resent any part of it. For the first time, I embraced where I was and allowed my life to take its course one day at a time, reframing all that ever happened in my past through the lens of appreciation was a gift. All the old events became tools from which to develop from. Every challenge, every mistake taught me something. That winter, life opened up and became a school, outpouring only divine lessons everywhere I looked. The responsibility of motherhood anchored me precisely where I needed to be. I was overwhelmed. It was overwhelming to absorb it all, and it took years to digest and get a grip on the influence of my new angle. The pattern emerges. Even through my anxiety and depression, I became aware of them. Now I was watching my runaway train and seeing how fast it was going. It was painful to acknowledge, but a relief to see my experience with a bit less reactivity and from a wider perspective. I was a single parent working my ass off at an hourly earning job, physically exhausting myself for a halfway decent paycheck. Something about the struggle of this experience felt familiar, even though the situation was brand new to me. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, each generation will reap what the former generation has sown. I was yielding what I had experienced in my childhood, reliving my mother's struggle in a different form as she relived her mother's battle with loneliness. When my daughter was nearing 4 years of age, I saw my mother's angry outburst in me. I found a local positive discipline parenting class and an excellent therapist to help me grant my daughter an emotionally healthy mother figure and stop myself from passing down this unhealthy struggle pattern to my daughter. I always wanted to be the mom I always needed and needed fresh input. The parenting classes taught me so much and reminded me how my parents were taught so little of it. It seemed my parents' generation didn't think of asking for parenting guidance. Instead, they pretended to know it all and to have it all figured out. Before the baby boomer generation, it was socially acceptable for relatives or friends to call parents out on their failings. But now, the mere mention of constructive criticism can shatter relationships instantly. The days of having extended families chime in to support parents are long gone. Seeing how I was relating to my daughter, I knew I needed more support to get me out of my maladaptive ditch. My tendency for emotional dysregulation improved through my awareness, seeing how strongly influenced my daughter was by my own emotional state. The classes were humbling as I cultivated an understanding of my feelings of powerlessness and inadequacy, providing me with repeated breakdowns that led to a multitude of key breakthroughs. I discovered how to witness my shortcomings and weaknesses through my daughter's eyes with more objectivity, compassion, and curiosity. Mothering her didn't suddenly become a walk in the park, but I was learning how to be better for everyone's benefit. And that's all I could hope for and muster up through that era of our lives. It's wild how kids mirror us what we are to them. Even more fascinating and insidious is how we project our issues onto our kids. If parenting is done right, the parent child dynamic is loaded with personal growth. In my parenting, I'm always coming back to appreciation and acceptance. This practice removes the shaming tendency that frequently creeps in. As I healed the shame inside myself, I was able and willing to love my daughter with the presence she deserves. Parenting is a fascinating career. Its lessons are beyond rich, that is, with the proper awareness. As much as I can remember, parenting for my folks only seemed to be a huge burden and an afterthought because they were busy working and trying to hold their own lives together. There was little quality time spent with my brother and me. My dad was immersed in operating his company, and my mom was usually resting in bed when she wasn't working or on a date. Neither of them was very active. I remember walking a few blocks with my mom once and she got winded. I always remember exercise being a huge chore for her. Perhaps it was in my genes to wear out and become inactive. Maybe it was my life choices and all the distractions of life seemed to override my desire to do my old living room dance offs as I did throughout childhood and into my early teens. Back then, it was the way I stayed honest with my feelings and dealing with all the moving parts of my chaotic family and ever changing social life. Life took over, and very gradually, adulting sucked the fun out of the notion of activity. Hating exercise. At the tail end of 2014, in the new rental with a toddler, I got into using my cell phone as my best friend, sharing my thoughts and feelings through Facebook posts. Aside from my growing proclivity towards writing poetry, which was pouring out of me all throughout my separation with my daughter's father, Facebook was the main outlet for my isolation and the place where I could pontificate on social norms and air random and not so random grievances. I was one of those who was into sharing a bit too much while remaining vague and obscure enough to think it was artistic, as if I was some rebel poet living in a small town in Western Connecticut. I noticed how lazy I felt after work and wondered when I stopped dancing. The notion kept popping up more and more, and I started to dance again, but felt very lethargic. Somehow I was blocked from it. Letting off steam and emoting through dance was second nature to me until the wind slowly began to leave my sails. My vitality was getting pulled under by some unrecognizable force I'd later known as dis-ease. Since college, the neck pain and chronic headaches only grew in consistency and frequency. Little did I know exhaustion was taking its toll on me, but I was amid my denial. I wasn't allowed to prioritize my pain. I had more important matters to concern myself with, like earning a steady paycheck, motherhood, and managing a lively social life to distract myself from all the pain I minimized. Gabrielle Roth, an American dancer and developer of the practice of five rhythms, said it perfectly. In many shamanistic societies, if you came to a mediocre person complaining of being disheartened, dispirited, or depressed, they would ask one of four questions. When did you stop dancing? When did you stop singing? When did you stop being enchanted by stories? When did you stop being comforted by the sweet territory of silence? Getting it straight. Aside from my new gratitude practice, my poetry was the only other activity that provided me some inward reflection. I began to share my poetry in public, and it became a great pastime where I started to make a couple of friends who were more like reporters and informants for a very exclusive local music community. I didn't fit in, and I felt it. I was over 40, crushing on a fiddle player who could have won an award for making a mockery out of me. An idealized stranger, distant enough to obsess over, the humiliation was nonstop, and I kept coming back for more. He'd give me hope of meeting up, only to leave me hanging time after time. Once in a while, he would grace me with his presence and spend hours arguing with me about why we would never work. I sought distraction. He was the perfect procrastination tool, my personal energy vampire, the great escape from my life focus for longer than I care to admit. Mr. Fiddleman served his purpose. I learned so much about my own dysfunctional relating from someone who played me better than his violin. Since I could no longer run away from my problems, I became entrenched in a more convenient escapes from socially acceptable addictions. They were pop culture quick fixes like drinking at local bars, watching open mic talent shows once or twice a week. Except for cannabis and a couple of dating apps, Facebook and Instagram were my most intimate companions, keeping me feeling I had fullness in my strange and isolated little world. I dug in harder to these distractions, clinging to the habit of escaping the present moment and my greater responsibilities for dear life. Due to fear and deep insecurities, I had massive resistance to focusing on my life's purpose. The distractions were overwhelmingly convenient. Add a copious amount of codependency, and poof, avoidance abounded. Planting seeds, making roots. I got the desire to start dancing more in my living room, but I still kept feeling a block of some kind and wasn't creative in my physical expression like I used to be. I came up with an alignment technique called rooting up, which felt good to grow better posture and body awareness. I loved helping myself with my posture and confidence while also helping others who struggled with the same issues of pain and poor self image. In my tinkering with alignment focus, it struck me to create a straightforward dance format for people too tired to exercise and incorporate the rooting up posture alignment method. The routine was so effortless that you didn't have to think hard about what was coming next, and the format followed a logical flow. The phases of the class started to create themselves. Coming up with fun phrases and names of positions was like a joyful puzzle. I kept playing with it and practicing. I felt great afterwards, like I'd actually finished a real exercise class, but only actual fun was had. By spring, I came alive with the deepest urge to share the program I developed. I was both excited and terrified. Oddly, I also had a feeling that's how it's supposed to go with a new idea. After teaching my newly founded movement class at local churches in my spare time, I then taught it at a couple of small yoga studios in and around town. Participants were few, but they all seemed to get a lot of enjoyment out of the experience. After most people completed my unique brand of low impact exercise, they raved about being uplifted and feeling more energized. Maybe it could have taken off, but at the time, I didn't know how to stay focused on my purpose. Everything else in my life seemed to be more important and less overwhelming than launching a startup exercise program. I quickly fizzled out. Running on steam with negligible support and lacking boundaries, I simply wasn't able to keep it going. My own saying of moving the movement wasn't as easy as I hoped. Try, try again. Between work, motherhood, and my artificially maxed social life, my bandwidth was so slim. I was drained by the end of my first year of teaching class I called intuitive movement. I didn't realize it then, but my heavy focus on external aspects drained all of my energy, mainly my social endeavors and dating life. Instead of moving locations, I escaped with excessive social indulgences and nonsensical distractions. At the time, I believed the classes were draining me, but my insecurities and fear were actually siphoning my drive to commit fully to teaching classes. I doubted that intuitive movement was what I was supposed to be doing with my life. I felt judged by people in the real exercise world, and yoga folks seemed unenthusiastic to even give it a try. My self doubt repelled the people I wanted to attract. Obviously, creating a storm of chaos around the dream of sharing it, I backed down. Yet it kept coming back to my mind. Something was telling me I had to teach this class. I knew if I had put it down and never looked back, I'd regret it for the rest of my days. Before I started back up again, I decided I needed more tools to learn how to be a better instructor. I knew the training would help my confidence, credibility, and ability to teach the best I could. I got my certificate in group fitness with the American Fitness and Athletics Association on my daughter's 5th birthday. It definitely helped. I began teaching again, but my lack of focus on it continued, as did my fears and my incredible ability to distract myself with my social endeavors. The tendency to obsess on minutia kept weakening my resolve. It was as though I averted from my own purpose, a fear of my own destiny. Alternatively, my codependency, i.e., the need to belong to a group to find love, persisted. I had a vast emptiness in my heart, and it kept me from what I believed was my calling. Everything and everyone else were more important for some reason, for some unidentifiable reason. Something was blocking me from diving in. That thing was wrapped up in one word: fear. My faith in myself was nil. I wondered how to reach people like myself, too self-conscious to exercise at the gym. I hated the gym experience, the lights, the awkward social interactions, the energy of the big egos. Something about it felt so unnatural. I felt like I was in a glass cage or on a hamster wheel on display. All of it was too stimulating for me. Gyms were a little open to my class. Gyms were a little open to my class, but my judgmental and repelling energy sabotaged that too. I wanted to inspire those too exhausted to lift a dumbbell to try intuitive movement as a more fun and straightforward way to get moving. I envisioned my class being a gateway to exercise, as a preparation for getting physical activity into people's lives in a kinder, more gentler way than jumping into the gym fishbowl. The people I was trying to reach were fatigued, unmotivated, and self-conscious, just like me. Finding how to connect with them was like a riddle. I couldn't figure out the answer. I couldn't reach or teach them because I wasn't there yet. I had to figure out how to get past my paralyzing self-consciousness to lead. It was impossible to teach, being an unhealed codependent. I had to be free of it in order to teach, and I was nowhere near there at this point. I had to develop the leadership by healing myself first. Learning this was painful. I taught myself confidence and better internal focus by practicing my class solo. This exercise gave me hope that I was on the right track. After all that speculation, there was no riddle I had to solve. All I had to do was heal my own relationships, especially the one with myself. Reaching others would just happen naturally from that point. That's how the power of attraction works. Progress, not perfection. Somewhere around 2018, I changed the name to the Intuitive Movement Integration Experience, IMI. It ceased to be a class. Instead, I market it as a group experiential inward journey. It is an embodiment practice, not a course. So much more than a mere dance movement class. It teaches the foundations of healthy posture I've been training myself in since I started learning posture exercises at my first chiropractic visit at the start of massage school back in 2009. Posture is more meaningful than just how we sit and stand. It holds our self-worth, attitude towards the world, and beliefs about ourselves. IMI is educational, simplistic, and fun. It can be a bit weird, as all new things are. Something about it is so bare bones and straightforward. The IMI method has no fluff, not an ounce of it. It is childlike in its simplicity and yogic in its spirituality. IMI is intended for two kinds of people: perpetual beginners who keep on starting and never maintain physical activity, and people who enjoy dancing. In fact, IMI can show people who think they can't dance that they can. It gives folks permission to explore and enjoy the fumbling nature of free-form dancing. The IMI experience is an intimate, self-focusing internal event, but it's also frivolous and fun, taking place among a kind-hearted group. The IMI experience is like a new friend, a bit shy and awkward at first, but as comfortable as a t-shirt once you get to know it. Created for people who suffer from chronic fatigue and pain, the method came out of my physical pain and my determination to eliminate it. I knew I was blocked, but I couldn't recognize what it was until hindsight, after I learned more about myself. If only I could get out of my own way. IMI ultimately became the experience that enabled me just to do that. Stillness in action. Observe what pain and emotional discomfort you minimize because you're too busy to attend to it. Consider ways to resolve or accept the pain and discomfort if you can. If you aren't sure, be aware of that and its impact on your relationship with it. Notice if there are any modifications to your life that you may want to create to make more time to ease your pain and discomfort. Challenge. Visualize having the time and energy to rectify any pain and discomfort you acknowledged. What resources are there to support making that a reality? Are they available online? Search for resources online and see what avenues exist for resolving your pain, and be open to new solutions. Journal about your possible paths to explore how to solve or accept the discomfort in your life. Confide in a friend or professional with your findings.